We are now live.
Thank you, officers. Okay, committee and Councillor Harris, good to see you here tonight. Welcome to Scrutiny Improvements, the last Scrutiny Improvement Committee meeting for Daventry District Council before it becomes engulfed by the Unitary Authority and no longer exists. So I'm not sure whether we should say that that's sad or not. Just to remind everybody, remain muted, as I've just said, while you're not speaking. Please, I'm happy that you just give me a hand to speak instead of actually officially raising your hand, because I can actually see everybody on screen, so that should be fairly easily controllable. Please wait till you're asked though before you do speak. Councillor Harris, you're quite entitled to speak at this meeting if you wish to do so on any topic at any point. So obviously you can't vote, but please feel free to do that if you wish. Usual rules apply. The meeting is being recorded, and it will be available for anyone to see, to listen to at a later date. It's also being streamed live on YouTube for any members of the public or anyone else that's interested to view it. So please be aware of that. And please make sure that you are all safe in your seats and know how to escape your house in case of emergency. I hope you all have your fire evacuation plans to hand. Otherwise, I don't want to be held responsible. Okay, so as far as I can see, it's up and onwards with the meeting. And item 1 on the agenda, as per usual, is to confirm the minutes. Are the committee happy that we confirm the minutes of the meeting? If so, please just raise your hand. Councillor Ritchie, are you happy? Okay. Officers, the minutes of the last meeting are approved as a true record of proceedings. Item 2 is apologies. I've received no apologies. Has anybody else? So it looks like we have no Councillor Harrington Carter here tonight, and I haven't heard anything from her as regards to her whereabouts. So we move on to item 4, the Corporate Strategic Plan, and the Executive Director Community to present a report.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just share the report on the screen. Oh, before I start, Councillor Wesley, would you like to cover the agenda item for declaration of a member's interests?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I did miss that out, didn't I? Yeah. Does anyone have any interest to declare? Any members? Could I just ask on this item for the agenda, because we have got the shared screen, I can no longer see everybody's hands. So if you do want to speak, can you please raise your electronic hand? And if the officers could spot that for me, then that would be good. Thank you. I hope everyone's clear on that. Okay, so Corporate Strategic Plan, sorry about missing interests, of which there were none.
So this is the third quarter performance report, and because we were aware whilst preparing it that this will be the last one that we actually get to scrutinise, both management team and with portfolio holders and scrutiny improvement, we've actually done it as a bit of a wrap up to forecast what the likely end of year position is going to be, with some final comments on the end of each performance indicator where noted. So starting at the beginning, which is always a good place to start. I'll just move this so I can see. So the indicator B, so I think I've got them all on there. Yeah, that's the first one. That can't be the first one, sorry. I think there's another one there, yeah. Right, so B1 is both of those are green. So I'll just focus on amber and red as usual. So yearly targets have been met.
I'll just double check something. So just so we know, we're only focusing on anything that's red at the moment, or are you focusing on anything that's predicted to be red by the final year? Is that what we're saying? Just to be clear.
We've endeavoured to capture that. So if something's amber, we're given an indication whether we think it will turn green or go red or whatever.
So, just to be clear, we're fairly positive that anything that's green at the moment will be green as at the end of the year. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So B1.1 is the target for the year has been met, so that is green and will stay green. B1.2, the cinema is on track to open when the COVID-19 situation allows. So that is one of the parts to be measured on there. Next page. This one is amber, but we are expecting this to be in place before vesting day, but that's subject to going to a council meeting in 2 weeks' time. So this staff resources have been allocated to delivering the council's priority projects. So it's not been possible to refurbish the public toilets. They'll be part of next year's allocation, but the target will not, though it's showing green currently, it will not be met by the end of the year. So apprenticeships is red and will stay red because it's been impractical. I think Councillor Ritchie, you're raising your hand.
Councillor Ritchie, please
Thank
proceed.
you. I mean, this question might come up on various issues. When you say that it will not be finished by the end of the year, from that, can we assume that everything is in hand for the responsibility continuing under the new council? Absolutely.
Absolutely. If that wasn't the case, I'd be making that clear. So apprenticeships, work placements, trainee posts wasn't possible to recruit new because of the restrictions. So that is, we're going with existing, but we haven't been able to recruit new ones. Therefore, that indicator's below the target and won't be met. So that will stay red. The third secondary school for Daventry has been met because the council has done what it was supposed to do with regards to its actions to secure a third secondary school, which has been a long-term aim. Clearly that's in the hands of the parties now, but the council bit has been done. Going on to the next page, the anticipated target for positive media coverage will not be met by the end of the year. Frankly, media is all about the pandemic, so actually getting good news stories published nationally, which is what this target is about, has been extraordinarily difficult, with that being the biggest show in town. The target for the year has been met for major planning applications. That's been a long established target. We started when this indicator came in, being very close to being in special measures immediately. We literally missed it by a fraction of a percentage, but I'm very pleased to say that we're a very long way away from the minimum performance on those, to the credit of all members and officers concerned. So yeah, that's green and very much will stay green. Electric vehicle charging point usage, you can see how that understandably dipped at the beginning of 2020 with so many cars off the road and very few visitors to our charging points in the town centre. But very encouragingly, it's more than made up for it in the third quarter of the year, and we're forecasting, even with this second lockdown, that the usage is significant enough that we will exceed the target at the end of the year. Another amber, so that's the percentage of council commercial units with an EPC rating of E or more. So that is looking likely to, we're at amber at the moment, and I think last time I checked, we didn't have the information, so that particular one could go over either way, because it very much depends on whether we can get works done. And you might be aware that some contractor works are not as easy to arrange as others currently. The amount of waste collected, again, is green and is on track to remain green for year end. Action days facilitated to enhance our environment has been very significantly hampered due to the pandemic, but we continue to work collaboratively with partners. Some local communities are doing local clear-ups following their own risk assessments and so on, but we were not in a position to be able to arrange as many action days as we normally would, hence being underperforming on that target. The number of high quality parks, that's gone green because the council was once again awarded the green flag. Overston Hall planning brief, that report is in draft but is not complete. It will be completed sometime under the new authorities remit. That is, the resources and everything is in place for that to continue. Conservation area. Sorry, somebody speaking. Did you hear that then? Sorry, there was voices came over my ear.
There was. I think it was Councillor Ritchie, but he hasn't got his hand up or anything, so we'll carry on.
Beg your pardon?
So conservation area appraisals is looking green and is likely to stay green. There are some more reports going to February strategy group and council. February strategy group that keeps that on track. Increased self-serve requests we're exceeding target on that, which is very encouraging. That is partly due to the pandemic effect, but also as much as possible, we've made it as easy as possible to self-serve, and we would like to think lots of those people who have shifted that way to contact us will carry on doing so, because that's actually a very efficient way to be contacted and your contact recorded. Sport and physical activity by the council is red, will stay red. That's entirely due to 2 extensive lockdowns, and what we're measuring is things that we facilitate directly, like through the leisure centre. So even if a small number of things are taking part at some times of the year, it's all year it's been dramatically impacted. So that is very much lower than normal. Supporting elderly and vulnerable people to live in their own home. Adaptations, we've kept the service going, and we have more than allocated the overall funding for the year, but there are some delays in delivering that, mainly because of reluctance at the beginning of the first lockdown for some vulnerable people to get works to start. Another factor has been contractors not being able to get some materials, but we are on track to allocate all of the funding this year, and that will be delivered as soon as possible, potentially though in the new year. Another good news story related to that is that Care and Repair have done a very successful pilot with occupational therapists at Northamptonshire County Council, and that pilot has demonstrated a reduction in waiting times for an occupational therapy assessment, which is a vital part of most disabled adaptations, and we've reduced waiting time since July 2020 from 20 weeks to 10.5 days, so just over 2 weeks. So we're very excited to be carrying that one on. We've extended it beyond December, and we're looking at ways for that to carry on in the new year. So even though we've been in a pandemic, we've changed some ways of working, and that is very much helping these vulnerable clients, hence me plugging it here mercilessly. The enforcement interventions, we're on track for that to be on target by the end of the year. So you can see we had some issues at the beginning of the year, but we've been able to catch all that up. So this includes things like HMOs and other issues of landlords requiring to do private works and that sort of thing. The the third quarter results showed a significant reduction in completions of new properties compared to recent years. However, there was progress being made on all the sites. So that report, I believe, is on the website anyway. If you're interested in housing completions, there was a quarterly report published as part of our ongoing monitoring of that by planning policy. The West Northampton strategic plan is green currently, but due to the elections process in May, it is unlikely that the consultation will circulate during PERDA. So that particular aspect of the target, which is the remaining one for this year, will not be met. But that's entirely due to the elections and not being able to do the consultation before. So residents have massively benefited from voluntary sector services, but just not the ones we commissioned, which is the only number we count. So there have been some absolutely fantastic range of activities, more volunteers than ever, but they're not what we count. This indicator has been about counting what we get back from the services that are commissioned. So it has been, the upsurge in volunteering has been sustained, and it is a huge part of ensuring that the district's vulnerable people continue to receive all the services they need in these troubling times. Under the red is volunteer activities undertaken by parish councils and community groups that we support. Again, they're doing lots of things, but it's not the things that we used to work with them to deliver. That's things like litter picking and all number of other activities that we were doing through this particular indicator. That's entirely COVID related, that one. Council tax collected, another COVID impact here. Our collection rates are lower than normal. If you look back over the years, you might get some fluctuations, but we're normally green or very close to green by the end of the year. But it's anticipated to be within 5% of targets. It'll be amber at the end of the year, but we're not expected to meet the council tax collection target. And the non-domestic rates collection has similarly been affected by the impacts around the pandemic. Can't even read that one. So this one's green, which we're expecting this to be green, subject to the NCC pension fund audit and growing concern disclosures from WNC post April 2021. The account should be signed off during February 2021, and we anticipate the target will be met by the end of the year. So no concerns there. Medium-term financial plan is green.
Sorry, Maria, I was muted there because I had a little bit of issue on sound here. Just going back to the previous sheet, could you just go back to the previous?
Yeah.
Was it that one? That wasn't the previous, was it?
I must have missed that one. Council tax collection.
Yeah. Okay. So just to be clear, the non-domestic is a red and not within 5%. So we're looking at, is that the estimated? Because you said domestic rates was going to be within 5% of target, I think.
Yeah.
I think I heard a target. I don't think we heard where non-domestic was going to be.
Yeah, council tax is we're projecting it to be amber by the end of the year.
Yeah.
But non-domestic rates collection is red, and we're anticipating it will stay red.
Okay. Have we had any sort of guess on levels of that?
Well, I mean, if you compare with previous years, it's a good 7 or 8% lower than this quarter in previous years. So, you know, it's I think you can forecast based on that, and there's potentially some more business related impacts too. If a business is struggling, it will prioritise other debts, which is probably plays into the next slide, actually.
I think we've got Councillor Robertson needs to speak though at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, so the you can see that our commercial rents collection is on track, is green, and we're expecting it to remain green as things stand. But that's, you know, there's more action can be taken against you if you don't pay your rent as opposed to your rate.
Can we have Councillor Robertson speaking? He just wants to say something. Councillor Robertson.
Coming from industry as I do, I've never quite understood why the target for collection isn't 100%. And this, I've raised this before and I've had an explanation, but I didn't quite understand it then. Perhaps I can get another one now from Maria, if that's possible.
I'd have to put that to my colleagues in the business team. It's commercial rates income. I mean, some of this is going to be around debts as people are leaving rented properties, commercial rented properties, but this will also include void rates. And, you know, we're setting our rent anticipated on 100% of properties, and they're not all going to be occupied at the same time, are they? Hence the other, the next indicator, 1.4, commercial space is occupied. You can see that that varies quite a bit. We've had 100% occupation at the end of 2018-19, but ever since it's been around the 90% mark.
Maria, could I just point out to members, these we have to understand the scrutiny and improvement, that these figures are actually decided by council, are they not? I mean, we actually decide these as council, so to ask an officer why we as council decided a target figure of whatever the percentage may be, that's the decision of the council. So we can't really quizzing an officer on where that comes from is not up to it's not up to Maria Taylor where those come from, or anybody else. And it's the executive team. It is us as councillors that actually sign that off at a full council meeting. So that's where it comes from. Just
I accept what you say. Sorry, Chair. I accept what you say there. However, I can't ever remember such a figure being brought directly before a full council. Maybe it's decided by another committee.
As far as I'm aware, it's a council decision, but I'll stand corrected on that.
I think it is ultimately when the plan is set, that is correct. But you want to know specifically why commercial rents, its target isn't 100%.
Well, not just commercial rents, both. Basically, I've always been taught that if a bill is due, it must be pursued fully. That's as simple as that. So I can't understand why a target should not be 100%. Just the target, not necessarily the result.
I think the point with targets is that we've got to set realistic targets to project what income is coming into the council. So I'll get that information and share that with you, Councillor Robertson. Should I continue? So the just to make sure we've covered this one. So commercial rent income is on target, and the percentage of the council's floor space that is occupied, which excludes property held for redevelopment, is occupation rate is currently 90%, which is on target. But as XOVA, the High March properties are not yet back on the market, so there's a bit of an explanation there for you. We are unlikely to be on target by the end of the financial year, so that one is currently green, but will have slipped down. Whether that means it's amber or red, I'm not entirely sure, because I'm not sure how big a proportion that is. So we've already covered this one. I was expecting that to be green. The council's financial house is very much in order in its final month. Another one there that's green. This final one on this page is the percentage of internal health and safety audit recommendations that are actioned in a timely manner. So this is an improving picture compared to previous months. But we're anticipating that the target will be met by the end of the year. On that one, and there's some information there about the actions identified during this year's health and safety audits. Workplace wellbeing is looking very positive. There's been lots of changes to activities planned, which have been very beneficial during the pandemic, some social type Zoom things and just other changes around adjusting to home working and supporting people from the office and so forth. But that's looking very positive. And the investors in people is projecting to be met by the end of the year. Customer satisfaction, we're not able to meet that because our indicator, this particular measure, because we can't change the measure just because we fancy it, we can't do face-to-face interviews. So this is going to look to be a no data by the end of the year. But we've provided the information that we are collecting. We've got some fabulous call answering rates, and we've got fabulous telephone and email surveys being carried out. What we can't do is face-to-face because the face-to-face people we're seeing in the offices very minimal. So we won't meet that target just because of the COVID impact, but it's good to see that customer satisfaction from the other ways of measuring is looking solid. So preparation of the West Northants Council is definitely on target. That is going to happen. It's that particular liner is well on its journey. And as explained, lots of COVID impacts. So whilst we've made some good progress in a lot of areas, as things stand, we're not meeting the 80% of the corporate plan targets that we desire, 71 currently, but otherwise some good performance.
Okay, thank you, Maria, for that. Is there any final questions on that before we go forward? I'd like to say thank you for sort of doing that as a wrap up. I think that was, I hope the members will agree, that was a sensible way of doing it, and hopefully that does prove the case as imagined in that report going forward to the end of the council. So thank you, officers, for providing us with that information. So no more questions there. We move on to the next item.
I think Councillor Harris has put his hand up.
Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Harris.
Thank you.
You were camouflaged in your
No, blends in. Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Yes, it's a real quick one, Maria, in regards to investors in people. Will the new council count as a new body and therefore have to go through a reassessment process for investors in people, because obviously it's a new organisation? So I was just wondering what the situation was going to be in regard to that.
Yes, it's a completely separate body. So it'll either decide whether to go for investors in people or not. In the past, various councils have had it, and certainly it's been something that we've had in place at Daventry District Council since 1998. I was on the working group that helped set the first one up. So we've had accreditation at Daventry since 98, and the other councils have or may still be accredited. I'm not sure, but that will be a decision for West Northants to take.
Is that okay, Councillor Harris? Good. Okay. Any more questions? He says, actually trying to note everyone's screen. Item 5 then, the rolling work programme as at 1st of March 2021. Chairman to discuss updates and presentations from members on the following task panels. Maria, do you just want to clarify for members what we're going to do with this section at the end of it, or what we propose in terms of officers' input?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. In line with the advice from the monitoring officer, we'll prepare an S&I position statement report in the next couple of days to go to council. So that will be to wrap up any final work that's ongoing.
So the members okay with that, because normally there'd be a certain amount of officer scrutiny on this, and it would go to the strategy group for verification. But because there's not, there's going to be like a tie-up run for full council to decide upon on the actions that come out of this scrutiny committee's recommendations. So is everyone clear on what we're doing there as we go through the items? Councillor Ritchie.
The answer to your question is no. I'm not entirely clear about what is going to happen with any recommendations that come out of this meeting. Is it simply going to be a sort of status report? It can hardly be a status report on work that's ongoing, because after this meeting, I assume that nothing will be ongoing as far as this committee is concerned.
Would you like me to come back, Councillor Ritchie?
Helpful, thanks.
Yes, please, Maria.
So I'll read off the advice that was sent by the monitoring officer. If you bear with me a second. So this was the advice from Tony Gillett. So regardless of what task panel work is open at the moment, what his advice is that it would make sense if all task panels were closed at the March S&I meeting. And the best way forward, his suggestion is for a single S&I report to be presented to council as a scrutiny position statement for noting, and then for councillors to lobby for any significant issues to be included in the West Northants Council scrutiny process. So that is something, that's his advice. And there is no, the council will cease to exist at the end of this month. So there is nothing more that DDC can do, because it can only do it through its committee structure. So this is what he's recommending.
Sorry. Sorry, this committee can, to be clear, this committee can follow the recommendations given by the scrutiny task panels, but it will go forward as part of the officers' take on where that stands to go forward. That is correct, isn't it? This committee can actually still undertake its recommendations for approval by full council.
It can, and those may well be, some of these things remain to be done. Please, West Northants Council, will you take up the baton?
Is that okay, Councillor Ritchie? Is that a little bit clearer now?
It's clearer, not entirely satisfactory. Of course, we're in a position that we can recommend that things that we are working on go onto the agendas for the scrutiny committees, if it's maybe plural, that there will be on West Northants. But there are still things that DDC may be able to do over the course of the coming month. Otherwise, it might as well just shut its doors now. And I just feel that if there are things that we feel that, look, they need to have a final go at doing something, I accept they can only do things that they can do at a few days' notice. But if these things are there, then I think that they should not simply be tucked away and said that we will leave this to West Northants. There have been loads of things that we've considered over the course of the past year, to which the reaction has been, okay, we'll leave it to West Northants. And in many cases, that perhaps has been the most sensible thing to do. But it will not always be the most sensible thing. And I just feel that we should, as the meeting progresses, if there are things that we feel that should be recommended for immediate action, then we make these recommendations.
Yeah, and Councillor Ritchie, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the recommendations are the recommendations. That's exactly what I think me and Maria Taylor just said. So the recommendations will be the recommendations going forward to full council to decide on whether to actually action those or not, because at the end of the day, scrutiny never ever actually actions anything. It always goes through to approval of full council to take note of what this committee has said, but what the actions are always decided elsewhere. So I don't see that as any real change. It's just there's a tie-up document from officers, and part of that process is because of the cramping up of the meeting and the lack of time as much as anything to go through the absolute normal process. So we're in a bit of a unique situation here. So it's just to ensure that everything is covered really as per a usual scrutiny meeting, but I'd suggest in a slightly different order. That's how I see it. I don't think it's detracting from what we're saying. So moving on then. First item on this is assignment 32, which is from Councillor Harrington Carter, who's providing an update on youth democracy. Unfortunately, I've heard nothing at all from Councillor Harrington Carter, despite having chased her on numerous occasions via various, I think every communication method that I could think of. So I'm a little bit disappointed as chair of this committee that I've heard nothing, including apologies tonight. I think it's really, really disappointing. I hope nothing is untoward with Councillor Harrington Carter tonight, but I am disappointed that we have nothing to discuss or debate, having been assured at previous meetings that this would be presented to go forward. And I do think it was an important piece of work going forward to advise the new authority on, and I think members will be disappointed that we've got nothing to actually hand over. So I don't think there's anything else to say on that, unless any other members have got any comments. No. So we move on to part B then, which is assignment.
Just to clarify, should we just mark that as we're just closing that?
Yeah, I think we're closing that, but I think the fact that the chair is disappointed with the actions of the councillor, really.
And I won't reference that in the report to council.
Okay, thank you. Assignment 34, which is Councillor Robertson's piece of work, the external perception of delegated authority to refuse planning permission. Just over to you, Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. Just let me get this mute thing under control.
You were unmuted and you're now muted.
I think I'm unmuted now. Thank you, Chair. Basically, this work came from what it says, a perception that it may not be democratic for officers, I'm talking about development control officers now, to make decisions without reference to councillors, which has been ongoing for a very large number of years, I believe. And not every council has adopted this policy by any means. Some have, some haven't. And in this particular council, when I looked at this, there was little interest in it, to be honest with you. Where the interest did come from was actually the officers themselves, and they obviously thought that it was quite a time-consuming and important power that they should continue to have. I don't dispute that. What the issue was about was its perception amongst the electorate, and whether or not it was considered to be democratic or not to allow let's face it, unelected officers to make decisions that directly affected individuals. Now, having looked at it further, there are so few of them that it's almost not worth talking about. I did considerable studies on this amongst parish councils who expressed no interest at all. The only people that seemed to care much were those that had actually fallen foul of the refusal, but more importantly, those that had fallen foul of a refusal of listed building consent, which I hadn't actually mentioned in the report directly, but it has been a bit of a, shall we say, subject of concern amongst a number of people over the years. And I believe that because of the draconian law surrounding listed buildings, and it is draconian if you look at it closely, that it is too dangerous or delicate, shall I say, a subject to leave purely unsupervised. And of course, I'm well aware that now it's far too late to do anything about it from a Daventry's point of view. There is no way we're going to change the constitution of Daventry District Council for the last few minutes of its existence. So I purely ask that this report be presented in the terms that Tamara has already explained to us to the replacement authority. That's all that can be done. It's already been mentioned by myself to some of the people concerned here, namely Adam Brown and the temporary leader, Ian, name escapes me. And they will or will not recommend it, as the case may be. So what is it all about? It's simply that. I recommend that to the replacement authority that some consideration be given to whether or not officers should, in terms of listed buildings, be currently unsupervised when it comes to granting that, or not granting it, but denying that permission. I think it's important that some action be taken on this, and the action I suggest is that it be supervised at least by not senior officers, but for elected some elected representative, maybe a senior member of the planning committee as it stands in the future, maybe somebody else. I don't go that deeply into it, but that is my feeling. Now, I have to say, I have very little support for this idea because basically there are so few of them that have been refused that there's no grip on the thing. So that's the crux of this report, and it's available for you to read should you wish to. You're muted.
We can't hear you.
Yeah. There's a new phrase that's come into the world. You're muted.
Well, I can't see. My actual mute button is covered up with a load of other stuff. Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Councillor Ritchie has some points to raise on this. If you stay muted as well, and then become unmuted if we need you to answer anything. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't, I'm not necessarily against the principle that there should be some sort of democratic oversight of what happens. I would be slightly concerned.
Overseeing, not oversight.
Right.
Sorry.
What was you on? But I just feel that for a start, we don't have senior members of the planning committee. Members of the planning committee all are there equally as members. In these days of electronic communications, it's not difficult to make that that broader. But if this is my main concern, is that if we are passing this on to the new authority, Councillor Robertson has suggested it should be passed on more or less in the terms in which he has presented it. I would need an awful lot more evidence and convincing to put my name to any statement that said that the planning rules for listed buildings were draconian. They may be tough to protect the buildings, but it is not a view that I would be prepared to support, and I don't think this committee should be support. Unless it was absolutely convinced and could put its finger on what it is that it would like to change. It may be we pass this on as an issue that needs to be looked at, but without giving an opinion on the nature of the legislation as it stands.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. So have you got a counter proposal a counter recommendation?
Are you talking about me or Councillor Ritchie?
I was talking to Councillor Ritchie. Do you have an idea what
Yeah.
recommendation should be?
No, I would just have it as a recommendation that the consideration should be given as to whether there should be, where there should be democratic accountability in the process by which the decisions, including decisions to refuse planning permission, are delegated. I wouldn't go any further than that.
Councillor Robertson, have you got any comments on Councillor Ritchie's point? It would seem to me that that's sort of what you're saying, really.
Well, yeah, yes. When it comes to, you did mention draconian, I called it draconian. You said it may be tough. Well, Councillor Ritchie may not be aware that if you live in a listed building, the council have control, because of legislation, over both the inside and outside. I'm talking about grade 2 listed buildings here, which is the lowest level of listing. Now, it is a fact that in theory, not necessarily in practice, but in theory, you need planning permission in your house, if you live in a listed building, to put a picture up.
Yeah, Councillor Robertson, I understand what you're saying there. I think what Councillor Ritchie was, I don't think he was totally disagreeing with you. What he was saying was that he couldn't put his name, he wanted to vote against the recommendation from the report, absolutely per se. But I think going through what you actually said, really what you were saying was that your report should go forward for consideration by the new authority if possible. So I think for me, from what I heard from both of you, I think I'm sort of pretty much in agreement.
Yeah, I think I am in agreement with that. It should go forward for consideration. Well, there's nothing else we can do, really.
Councillor Ritchie?
Can we remove the word draconian?
Oh, fair enough.
Okay. Are we, Maria, did you get the gist of Councillor Ritchie's words on that? Because I think it's more pertinent to what Councillor Robertson actually meant to say, and remove the word draconian from the report.
Yeah, well, I would be in favour of that, Chair, because it is a tough word, but maybe very tough is a better replacement, which is what Councillor Ritchie suggested, I believe.
I think I could just summarise the response that came actually via Development Control Manager. It's a specialism within a specialism, and a lot of, there's a lot of technical input required, not just from the conservation heritage officer, but also often you getting advice from other bodies because of protecting the heritage and the specific issues relating to individual property. So that's why our constitution did have a different scheme of delegation, slightly altered, and that's quite typical actually. And of course, if you refuse planning application, somebody is able to go and appeal, but it is a particular technical specialism. So even a development control manager would be unlikely to challenge their in-house heritage experts without really good reason, because it's the one part of planning that is not strictly a permissive regime. It's a criminal offence to do unauthorised work in a listed building, because the national law sets out that those buildings warrant protection. So even whether it's grade 1, grade 2, grade 2 star, whatever it might be, it has been deemed, it's gone through a due process, and they are protected buildings, and we are supposed to be protecting them into perpetuity. So the other point of note is that West Northampton Council are currently going through approving their constitution. That would have got done last week, but they ran out of time at 11 o'clock, I understand. So I don't think there's any issues with the constitution, but it's certainly, that's already well progressed. Lots of working groups have gone through this, and this hasn't been identified by those as an issue. So I imagine if it was picked up, it would be in a future programme of some sort.
Thank you, Maria, for telling us that. Notwithstanding, personally, I think this is a piece of work that's actually been done by Councillor Robertson, and I, for one, wouldn't like to totally waste it. And I think Councillor Ritchie's suggestion that this report is sent forward to the new authority with the amendment that he suggested, which was agreed by Councillor Robertson. I think I'm in agreement with that as well. I think we can still do that. I mean, at the end, when it comes down to it, it's not our decision what anyone does with it. It may go to the new authority, and they may throw it in the waste paper bin. But we will have minuted on the record that this was either approved for onward transmission to the new authority or not. And so I'll ask. I assume that obviously that is okay, because as we said at the beginning, this committee can decide what it wants to go forward. But of course, that's not to say that our full council will agree that it does so, because that will be the nature of the beast as well. So, do you have enough words from Councillor Ritchie? Because I think it was really his amended recommendation that was the one that the author, Councillor Robertson, accepted, which was along the lines of, I think the report should be passed to the new authority for consideration. Was that approximately it, Councillor Ritchie?
With the word draconian, that's all I got. Was that what you got as well, Catherine? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, are we all in favour of that committee? If so, raise your hand.
Okay, great. I will say, now that we've got new appointees in place, there is nothing whatsoever to prevent any councillors lobbying the newly appointed executive director place, or the assistant director regeneration, who's the directors that look after planning and who've been working on the Future Northants programme. You know, if you want this to get some airplay, I would recommend lobbying those officers, and also the monitoring officer who's putting the report together.
So, Councillor Robertson, I'll suggest that as you did the report, that might be an idea for you to send through to the monitoring officer and those people in place, if that's okay. If you need any assistance on just reminding who's what, when, and where on that one, I'm sure the officers will be able to help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. But basically, some of that work's already been done.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The next assignment then is assignment 35, which is protecting Daventry's vision, and this is over to you, Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. This is really a bit of a continuation from the discussion that we had at our last meeting. You'll be aware my view is that, you know, COVID has prevented us from having the sort of consultation that I think was necessary on a project of this nature. A project that we assume is going to be very important for the future of Daventry. If it wasn't very important, then perhaps we shouldn't have been bothered in even getting involved in it. But it has been happening. I say the form of consultation that I would have liked to have seen has not been there. I haven't been asking for something that is exceptional. If you go back 20 years, yeah, there were some fringe groups that were talking about the need for having participation in decision-making by local authorities. Now, the fringe groups include our Ministry of Communities and Local Government and Housing. I can't remember which way the words go around. It includes that. It includes the United Nations body. It includes the OECD, are all coming up with fairly similar formulations of what good communication, good participation should be. And, you know, frankly, here, my concern is that with COVID, we haven't seen it. I won't go into whether we would have seen it if we hadn't had COVID, but I will give those involved the benefit of the doubt on that one. The latest draft was presented to a private meeting of councillors and others. I wasn't at it because I had a long-standing engagement that evening that I couldn't withdraw from. I haven't seen it, so I don't really know what is in it. And there are very, very few people in Daventry who will know. There may be some who might have looked on the website when they had the second round of consultation. But again, that was merely sort of box ticking. I understand it is moved on quite a long distance from there. And I'm told by some that it is very much better than the earlier draft. I mean, that is what ought to happen. But my concern is that it is not there on the agenda for the strategy group meeting later this week, which suggests that it is going to be a last-minute job that will be put in front of the council at its very last meeting. There will be a huge pressure to simply say yes and let things move on. But while Daventry District Council is going to come to an end at the end of the month, Daventry doesn't. Daventry will remain effectively unchanged. And I just think that this is, we needn't do things this way. We needn't accept that we don't have time. There are all sorts of projects that we've been working on, from, construction, the cinema, everything else, things that the district council has invested time and money in. They don't suddenly come to an end, they will continue. And I see no reason why the consultation on Daventry's future, the vision for Daventry's future, why that should not continue in much the same way. An opportunity to catch up on some of the things that have not been done. And I feel quite strongly that, if you can't have a neighbourhood plan without having a referendum in your village, it seems a nonsense to have something as important as as a plan for Daventry's town centre over the next 15 years, nodded through by councillors just before they're all made redundant, without the people of Daventry even knowing what is in it. I just think it is hugely insulting to Daventry to approach it in this way. And that is why my recommendation is that, look, we've got to, it's not saying that bad work has been done, it's saying that there is more work that needs to be done. There must be the opportunity for the council not just to look at whatever is put before it in a couple of weeks' time and say, yeah, we take it or leave it. There's got to be a recognition that this is a process that has still some way to run, and that if it is going to have any sort of legitimacy, then that requires the involvement of the residents of Daventry. Let me just add that people preach about the need for participatory methods, not from a sort of ideological standpoint, but because they recognize it leads to better outcomes. But it also leads to a different sort of engagement with your population. It gets people more involved. It gets over the problem that we always face when elections come around, particularly with local elections. It doesn't actually change anything. They don't listen to us. That, I'm afraid, is going to be the sort of epitaph for Daventry District Council as it stands at the moment. I would just like to see the District Council doing something different, so that in the future, even if the vision turns out to be a total disaster, it's the people of Daventry have got to be in the position to say, yeah, but it was our disaster. That is what we rightly or wrongly decided. And I just feel that we shouldn't simply sit and nod something through. We should make our case for saying, let's consult the people.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Does anyone have any comments on Councillor Ritchie's report and recommendation? It would be good to hear some views before we take a vote on it from the members here tonight. No. As chair, I'll say staying neutral, but I won't stay. I should be staying neutral, but I will say what I actually believe on this. I take I take on board what Councillor Ritchie says. I think consultation is a really, really difficult thing. I have my own views on how consultations should be run, and I think they should be. My view is they should really be, to be meaningful. They should be on a rolling, probably on a rolling panel basis with rolling panel members and everything else mixed in to get some sort of consensus view undertaken by professional opinion readers, opinion polling companies that understand how to drag the information out of people. And I have advocated this before previously at Daventry Town Council. I always think that one-off consultations are difficult, really, really difficult to manage, and really, really difficult to know where a point in time is that they are finished, because of course there is a danger that they're never finished, because every time a new proposal comes forward or someone's got a different idea, it means you go out to consultation again. What I would point out with this one is that I was actually quite pleased with the level of participation that appeared. I know we've got tens of thousands of people in the town, and the responses are more like in the hundreds, but it was reasonable. And I saw quite a lot of debate around it on social media, etc. I know the town council has debated it, and the town council is also another level of democratic authority that is there to that is elected and is there to listen on the ground to what the people of Daventry actually want. And obviously, you're never going to satisfy 100% of people. It is always about it's all about trying to get the gist of the majority. My personal view on this is that, notwithstanding what I said at the beginning about how consultations should be done, I think there was a lot of initial discussion about this with open meetings. Things were presented, and yes, it moves on. I also believe that intrinsically, as a vision, it is just that. It's not a decision. It is a vision, and by default, it's actually looking at where things go. And as such, I believe it's always going to be a living, breathing thing. And I think one of the good things about this was that Daventry District Council did undertake this vision with the remaining democracy, the really local Daventry democracy, if you like, being the town council, and they undertook to take on this survey and the vision with the Daventry Town Council, who are still going to be in existence when a new authority comes into place. And I would hope when members are elected to that body in May, that they do take on this vision, and they do lobby the new authority, and they do make sure it is the right thing for Daventry. And I understand Councillor Ritchie's concerns, but from my point of view, I don't agree with the recommendation that pertains to Daventry Town Centre vision. I think it's more to do with how consultation should be done overall. But that's my view as chair, and I'm just from what I'm saying. So if there's any more comments, unless there's any more comments, we'll go to a vote on whether we accept the recommendation or not. Or any other comments from you from what I've just said, Councillor Ritchie? So all those in favour of Councillor Ritchie's recommendation going forward, please raise their hands. Okay. Scrutiny does agree that recommendation goes forward to full council as discussed. Thank you, Councillor Ritchie, for your report. I'll just find the next item on my screen. Sorry, I haven't got a paper version. Are we on Councillor Frost's?
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry, just bear with me a sec. Yeah, Assignment 36, Councillor Frost, DDC's response to COVID-19. To please present your report. I'll go back on mute so I don't disturb you.
Well, sorry. So yeah, basically, you know, thanks for Maria, your comments. You've all got it in front of you. I mean, what's the point of me, you know, verbally saying what's already in there? But the two things I was going to ask were, Maria, first of all, are you happy with your comments appearing as Appendix 3? And secondly, what's the Oversight and Engagement Board? Can I ask that, Chairman?
Sorry, Councillor Frost, you're asking Maria that question?
Yeah, through you, Chairman.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the context of that. Whereabouts is that?
I think it's probably I think it's in your I think it's in the officer's report, isn't it, Councillor Frost?
Yeah, it's in the reply, isn't it? Let's have a look. Get on my screen.
I basically provided a summary of colleagues' responses. So which was in directors and service managers, and just to put them into sort of consistent format. I'm just trying to find the context of that.
Yeah, me too.
Is it not oversight and improvement of the new authority? Is that not what we're saying there? I can't remember.
I think Ian is referring to the fortnightly meeting that has been established to keep members in the loop with regard to the pandemic. The chief executive, that is the chief executive's comment.
You're right. It's in the it's where it says general. It's the fifth point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. It says there's criticism about the lack of engagement with members, but no mention of the fortnightly close meeting of the Oversight and Engagement Board. Is that the COVID briefings then?
Yes, that's right. That must be what chief executive is referring to, and that was his comment.
Okay. Well, so I suppose the proposal is that it be sort of filed for posterity, and with those comments included as Appendix 3. Inviting comments from anyone? Sorry, Chairman, that's your job to ask questions like that, isn't it?
Yes, it is really, Councillor Frost, but I don't mind you asking at all. Councillor Harris, you have your hand up, so please feel free.
Thank you, Chair. I was obviously part of the panel that worked on this report. I have a drop dead of 7:30 because I have another meeting to go to, so I'll be as brief as I can. Just a particular comment on the Oversight Board that's referred to. I think the point that we're really happy to include, as Councillor Frost said, those comments as appendices. But probably somewhat resistant to actually changing the body of the report, which I think some of the points referred to. The Oversight Board, for instance, I was only aware of being invited to those COVID briefings for the first time in December of this year. That was the very first one that I went to. And if there were others and it was happening during the year and regularly, I certainly wasn't aware of those. That was the reason, I think, why Councillor Frost was asking for some clarity. The point I want to make is that clearly it's an indicative document. It doesn't cover absolutely every aspect of the response from the council. It's very much based around those individuals that we spoke to and the key issues that arose. And I think from my point of view, the one thing that I would like to be made clear is the importance of the cultural aspects for the new authority. I think there's a lot of things in there that I believe will be quite useful for them to think about in the context of creating the new authority. And I think really it should be taken in that light. You know, it was never intended to be a fully overview of every single aspect of the council, because it physically couldn't have been. And of course, it is really an interim document on the basis that we are still in the thick of the COVID crisis. It's not gone away anywhere anytime soon. So I think that's really my comments that I would like to make. The final thing I would like to just also suggest, and again, Maria, that there is a comment in there in regards specifically to the home working policy. And again, I think that the point that we were trying to make is that policy might be one thing, but people's reaction to or beliefs around that type of policy, it could be adrift. And I think that's really what we're saying, is that we felt that there is a gap there. There may well be a home working policy, but the perception was that it wasn't particularly encouraged. And I think that's what we were trying to get at there. And there will be disagreements. So I think therefore the sensible thing would be to, leave those comments in as an appendice. Thank you.
You're absolutely right about the home working policy. It was generally ad hoc and only where absolutely necessary. You're absolutely right that this office, it was everybody's default place of work, unless there was some solid reason to work from home. So that is correct. In terms of your recommendations, this is something you could put to the council, the New West Northamptonshire Council per se, or you could specifically recommend that, there is an ongoing group looking at running the pandemic, running all the council services around that, the gold meeting. It may be some of the recommendations could be raised with relevant people through that. I can find out what the relevant way to do that is if you wish. So rather than it just being a generic one, but potentially raise it with the relevant people as that evolves.
I'd also like to say, obviously, I'm very grateful to Councillors Harris and Ritchie for their contribution, and so I don't know if I'm allowed to record that gratitude, but if I am, then that would be great. It was very much a team effort, as you would have gathered.
Thank you, Councillor Frost. Just to go back, and I'd just like to say as well, thank you very much, task panel members, on this. I found it a really interesting piece of work to read, and I do think it was useful. It was always going to be difficult to put this in place, as Councillor Harris said. We're still in the pandemic, so definitives cannot be put in place. But there are learnings to be put in place, and I thought this was a really good document that at least that did open the debate, and I do think it's important that it goes through. I quite liked it. I thought the officers' comments that came in obviously couldn't be taken into account in the actual report. I do think it's the best idea to put them in the appendix, as I suggested before, because I think that adds to the debate as well. It just puts everything into context. So I thought it was a really good, well thought out piece of work, and I do commend you for the actual effort that you put in tracking everyone down and talking to them in what's difficult times. Maybe this does show in a way that remote meetings are the way to go, because it may have been actually easier than trying to get everyone together in physical offices at DDC. So, that is a case in point, isn't it, going forward? The only thing that I would add is, do the authors actually want to take on Maria Taylor's suggestion and maybe say to West Northampton Council, maybe in particular X, Y, and Z on whichever discussion group that they're on. I'll leave that. I'll pass that back to Councillor Frost to say yay or nay, or anyone else for that matter.
Yeah, Ken, what's your view? Through you, Chairman.
I think it's important that, particularly the points on section 6, the E to F, they're important. They're not necessarily just about how you respond to COVID, but it was more looking at what was happening within the council and around about the council. When everything was under the stress of needing to respond to the pandemic, how did the parts actually fit together? It wasn't so much about the journey, but how good was the car that we were using? And I think that, yes, I hope that they won't be lost, but I'm at a loss to know where in the new authority they should actually be sent to, because I think that is and thanks for all the work that Councillor Harris did before he goes. It's almost as somewhere this needs to be plugged in right at the top. I'm quite sure that an Earnshaw has got quite a long reading list at the moment, but perhaps even those 2 pages could be added.
Sorry, Councillor Ritchie. Which 2 pages do you mean? Sorry, Councillor Ritchie, I didn't get that. I was on mute again. Still.
Sorry, yes, but with section 6, conclusions and recommendations. There are paragraphs A to F, just at the end of the report.
Yeah. Are we not including? Are we not? I mean, you've got the ability to include everything in the report, including the appendices, haven't you? I mean, that's really what we're saying, isn't it?
Well, if you certainly, my sort of slight concern is the more pages you send, the fewer pages are actually noted. But
yeah, I'm getting confused now. I mean, I'd sort of say the report either goes forward as said, or yes, you are. If you want to delete pages,
no, in that case, I'm happy with the report as it stands.
I think my question to the task panel members was really, did you want to just change the recommendation to the destination of the report, which was a suggestion from officers, that you actually enhance the destination of your report to the new authority? That was what you were saying, wasn't it, Maria?
Yeah, I mean, normally the approach for a full task panel report like this would be to produce that document that goes to strategy group with this is what scrutiny improvement are recommending, and this is the management response to that, and any proposed recommendation follows that, and that's what goes to council. So I was just seeking to explore whether you wanted me to work at anything up around that, you know, about targeting some of this response to, you know, key people in West Northampton, rather than just putting some generic thing that may end up on a scrutiny agenda at some point.
Councillor Frost.
Chairman, thank you. I mean, that seems like a good idea to me. So I think what Maria's suggesting is that we just effectively redirect it from DDC towards WNC. So that makes very good sense. I mean, to a point where almost, yeah, put bluntly, what would be the point of doing anything else? It's going to be, yeah, it's where it's going to be most useful, I would think. Ken is my sort of co-author, if that's right with you, Chairman.
Absolutely, agreed. Yeah.
So, are we all agreed on that recommendation with the amendment as suggested by Maria Taylor? If you want to show your hands. That is agreed by scrutiny to go forward on that basis. Is that okay, Maria? Are we okay on that?
Right. So to be clear, I'll put a brief report together that provides the management response to the recommendations as usual, and captures relevant referrals once I've looked at those in detail.
The management response is in Appendix 3. The last one I sent you, from my point of view at least, if you're happy with it, it can just be sent lock, stock and barrel to WNC if you like.
Yeah, that's that if the amendment to your report is that you're accepting you're adding the executive comments to it, I haven't got an issue with that at all.
Yeah,
and then there'll be a nice covering to this that goes to council now.
Yeah, I think what we agreed was inclusion of Appendix 3, but the destination of the report to the people that you suggest, and also to the people you suggested. I think that's
once I've worked out what that is.
Yeah.
I wonder, Chair, if it would be useful if Councillor Frost was to suggest a sentence to put in somewhere, probably near the beginning of the report, saying that there is this Appendix 3 that is there, and we accept,
Well, funny enough,
we won't withdraw our own recommendations. But on the other hand, we acknowledge what has been said.
If I can just interject, Chairman, I have taken the liberty of doing just that. So on the latest version, and I'll just dig it out myself,
You did.
I have amended the front page, so it now reads, and it says, any comments, recommendations, not opinions, criticism, blah, 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 and the executive response to our work can be found in Appendix 3 at the end of the report.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what we were all speaking about. Sorry if that wasn't clear, but yeah, it does need to be the amended Appendix 3 that you sent through to us, that you kindly sent through to us. So are we clear on that then, Maria? We understand that it's with those words from Councillor Frost, which I think were important. Thank you for pointing out, Councillor Ritchie, so we know where we actually are on that. So, and again, thank you for that piece of work. That goes forward. That moves on to item 6, which is implementation activity. Provide an update on progress of recommendations. Can I just say to everybody, for some reason my iPad hasn't charged up properly. I may need to switch devices at some point in a little while, but I'll let you know if I'm near complete loss of power at that point.
Okay, so assignment 20. This is the one that's the same as last time, isn't it? So no changes since the last meeting for this one. One outstanding action.
Members, sorry, feel free to ask a question if there's anything that you're not clear about as we go through.
So something will be included in West Northants programme to do that, because that's been delayed, the infrastructure document. And the rest is implemented. Assignment 26, parking in Daventry Estates, we made amendments to that as suggested last time, and there's no change since then. The amendments being that it's the outstanding action is not going to be progressed because actually we're there's not been a solution identified by a suitable budget identified, so this isn't going to go ahead. So that's recommendation 5 that was amended. Assignment 29, one outstanding action, and that is that's number 1, recommendation 1, and that will be picked up after the pandemic by the appropriate work programme. County Antisocial Behaviour and Hate Group, which interestingly we'll consider in a similar form, because community safety is being looked at county-wide after vesting day. Climate emergency, it's going to be tricky for me to pick up the changes because I haven't got the highlight. Have you got a colour copy of it there? There's definitely been some updates since last time, but unfortunately the agenda was circulated without the normal red inked for us to easily buy the changes. So I will do my best to work out what the updates are from last time. Don't believe there's any on page 1. Or page 2.
Councillor Ritchie.
I just wonder whether you're Maria, how you'd like to take this. Do you want questions on the page as we go through them, or do you want to save it all to the end?
No, let's go through them and do it that way.
The only thing I wanted to ask on page 42. Page 40, I mean, there are various references to the paper that was being produced in Northampton. Just wanted to check I'm actually in the right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Was the interaction between the councils here, was that entirely at officer level? The paper presumably then went to Northampton Borough Council to be approved by Northampton Borough Councillors. I just wonder if there needs to be another sort of process whereby, you know, councillors from other parts of West Northants are at the same time saying yes. I mean, it may be that it doesn't actually matter much because it's all going to be overtaken on the 6th of May. But I just wondered if that was entirely balanced, that we end up with a policy that has been approved for us by councillors in Northampton. That may be the future that we've got to look forward to, but it just seemed to have come a little bit early.
I think the idea was this year that we would, all of the relevant officers in all of the councils in West Northamptonshire, so the 4 councils, ensured that any documents done by the county and the borough, because they were already doing them, had as much input as possible. So yes, from the officers, but also we've kept the portfolio holders and so on engaged in that at the different councils. So I agree it's not perfect. The county document has obviously got county councillor input, and that is covering the whole of West Northamptonshire as well as the rest, the north. So yeah, it's not perfect. And at some point, it was just so that the relevant officers have got as much input as possible to ensure the rural issues are picked up, being frank. So actually, that can become a platform for a West Northampton, the best of a West Northampton policy. Best we could do in the time available, and absolutely no point in 4 councils all running their own policy work when actually we could work together sooner rather than later in that final year. So yeah, we've influenced those so that they reflect as many as the West Northampton issues as possible. So yeah, you're right, it hasn't had official councillor endorsement in Daventry District, no, but you know, we've done our very best to capture all of the issues. Shall I continue? So on page 43, we're expecting the so this is the NBC carbon reduction strategy for January Council, which has had input from DDC and SNC, and that was proposed that become a West Northampton policy document, and it is expected to be completed prior to vesting day. So, you know, that is something that will be put to West Northampton Council at some point for endorsement. So we've got a common approach to carbon reduction across the West, but effectively by proxy doing that through Northampton Borough. So not been able to explore the feasibility of energy clinics due to the pandemic. That's also on that page.
I want.
Sorry, go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, I mean, the county council, are they involved in this too?
Yes, it's all of the. It's been done as a county-wide piece. All of the relevant environmental people have been engaged in this work.
Thanks for that. Thank you.
So moving on to page 44. I don't think there's any updates on that one since last time. Oh yeah, there is. Sorry, but it's just on page 45. So there'll be. This is the unitary considering what role it might have in the local generation of renewable energy, and that will be included in the action plan being developed by the Environmental Improvement Officer and South Northampton Council for consideration in a new unitary. So that is being picked up in the action plan that's going to be proposed. Tree planting targets further down on page 48, that will also be included in the action plan being developed by both DDC and SNC. Moving on to page 46. The new West Northampton strategic plan will include climate change in planning policy, and that will be encouraged when the Environmental Improvement Officer has oversight of the drafts. So it's in the programme and there will be input from relevant officers. The Environmental Improvement Officer we've got in Daventry District will actually be the only full-time officer across the West on vesting day, because South Northampton's post holder is a fixed term contract that ends on the 31st of March. So actually we are being very influential, and we're very lucky to have a very enthusiastic maternity cover, as well as our Jolie, who's equally enthusiastic about the agenda. So we've got really good influence there at DDC. Similarly, on page 47, looking at the Climate Emergency Forum, that will be included in the action plan being developed between DDC and SNC. Likewise, on page 48, the net zero carbon by 2030 will be included in the action plan. The new West Northants strategic plan policies will include climate change and renewable energy, and the relevant officer will be involved in shaping those. Clearly, they will have to go through a complete democratic process, but you've got the right technical experts lobbying for the right things to be included.
Question from Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. I just didn't want to go past, page 48 at the bottom, 3.16, which of course has always remained unchanged. There was a question that was asked at the special council meeting just a few weeks ago. The answer that the question, I think, was about the investments in the bank in Abu Dhabi. Now, I don't know how much press coverage that council meeting got. The only thing I'm aware of is that there were reporters that were quite interested in following up that question. I don't know if it led to anything actually happening. But the impression that was certainly left was that the leader of the council didn't actually seem terribly sympathetic, that didn't actually seem to have a terribly great interest in pushing ahead in this recommendation. Yet it had been passed over as something for somebody else to think about. But I was asked if there was a note of hostility in the response. It hasn't happened. Although at the time that the task panel's report was presented, at that stage, I think, as the task panel, we said something like that, when opportunities arose. There has been reinvestment, however, in the course of the year that I find slightly disappointing. But was there a reason for that?
Fundamentally, the Daventry District Council sets its treasury management policy each year, and so does Northamptonshire, and so will West Northamptonshire Council. So the proposal was put to our own Section 151 officer, and our policy is very clear about what is it called, liquidity, something, and yield. They're the key drivers. So where they can make an environmental selection within that context, they do, but there are very limited numbers of funds, and one part of the treasury management strategy is that you cannot put huge amounts in one fund. So I think it's been explored by DDC, and then this action was about encouraging the new unitary to consider green credentials in its treasury management strategy, and that's all we can do. That is something to put to the Section 151 at West Northants Council, Martin Henry. So there's a limit to what we can do as DDC and as West Northants Council, because this is in the context of multiple millions of pounds going through the authorities and having to have, you cannot have all your eggs in one basket. And if you limited your investments just to environmental, there would be huge risk in that with taxpayers' money.
I assume you said yes, Chair, but you're muted.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just.
Look, can I sort of preface what I'm going to say by saying that I have been very pleasantly surprised at the way that work on climate emergency in Daventry District has progressed. I think it has gone very well. I had huge worries about it, you know, to begin with. And of course, I don't feel it's going nearly far enough, but you wouldn't expect that. But I feel grateful to those who have moved it. But I would be grateful if it could be minuted. That I think that what has just been reported to us, and I know that that the officer is only reporting what has been put to her, but I think it is complete and utter nonsense. The European Investment Bank has decided it's going to have nothing to do with fossil fuels. Major investors have said they're having nothing to do with fossil fuels. The guy whose name escapes me, who until last year was the head of the Bank of England, the Canadian bloke, you know, he was absolutely clear that fossil fuels were probably, by this stage, a dodgier investment than actually putting money into others. You have got companies that are topping the investment ratings. You've got sort of specialist banks, and it's not just the sort of smaller ones like Triodos and people that are, you know, that are leading the field. There are all sorts of indicators showing that banks that have got an ethical investment policy are actually doing as well. I know that all the logic suggests that, if anything, if you put a constraint, no matter what the nature of the constraint is, it limits your choice, and therefore you're likely not to do so well. But in practice, that is not what the financial markets are finding, and I think that it is a nonsense. I would add, though, that even if we did find that that we would financially be much better by putting all our money into fossil fuels, or I think the question covered the separate area of, you know, of human rights abuses and things. Even if we decided that we weren't going to bother about that, there is still an issue that we need to face. It is a decision by members. It is not simply a decision about the return on investments. It is a statement about what sort of society we want to have and what is important to us. And I think that, you know, the 151 officer, of course, is going to look at things through through a financial prism. From our point of view, you know, we have got to, I think, as members, to insist that we want a council that we are comfortable with, that is based on the ethical standards that I believe that many people within the district would want.
I think the issue, Councillor Ritchie, is that the Section 115 officer put the Treasury Management Plan and strategy to councillors every year, and that was done last year. And there are very strict framework of legislation around that. You know, we may be more constrained than other organisations, and we're handling lots of cash, and a lot of the investments are around that. You know.
Right, can I just stop you there, because I think we're going to be going around in circles here. I don't think it's up to you to necessarily defend the decision, because I think what Councillor Ritchie is trying to say here is that a decision was made, a recommendation was passed through to council, which was passed from scrutiny improvement, that we would at least look at ethical investment. I think that's correct, and I think what he's saying is that other factors from other policies intervened against that, and I think that's what you're saying, and so it went down. That's the scrutiny recommendation that was accepted by council got trumped by the council's financial regs and the view of the financial officer. And I think what Councillor Ritchie is trying to say, and I may be wrong here, Councillor Ritchie, but I think what you're trying to say is that it's frustrating that the democratically arrived at decision wasn't actioned because, at least from my point of view as well, I'd sort of agree with you, because it should have actually been pointed out that there was a conflict at some point for councillors to take a decision on. And I think
decision, and what's in this 3.16 is about the new unitary considering green credentials in its treasury management strategy. What Councillor Ritchie is talking about a separate question relating to a DDC investment. So, I mean, there's absolutely no reason at all why we can't still put that, you know, those concerns to the Section 151 officer at West Northants
I
Council.
understand what you're saying now.
So I'm just trying to stick to the.
I understand what you're saying. Sorry. Let's just hear from Councillor Ritchie again, and then hopefully we can.
Yes, but I accept that the formulation that was put to the strategy group after the report went through this committee was to the effect that it would be put to the new West Northants Council. There was no suggestion at the time from the strategy group when that was decided that it was being put that way because you didn't actually believe in it. There didn't seem to be any reason why Daventry would actually follow that policy at the time. So I am quite willing to accept that in terms of what was actually written down at the time, the 151 officer has not actually crossed anything that she was told to do by the council. I just find it a little disappointing, and I find that perhaps that the council was misled. I appreciate that there is legislation that controls what a 151 officer can actually do, but there are many other councils around the country that have got ethical investment policies that, and with many of them, because of the climate emergency programs, avoid fossil fuel investments, and I don't see why we couldn't have done it too.
Okay, Councillor Ritchie, I think we've got what you said, and I think you're asking for that to be part of Scrutiny's minutes, which I'm sure the précis of that your thrust was actually getting at. So, if you'd like to carry on, Maria, then I think we can move further forward.
Yes, to close that down, I will ask our 151, and I will make sure that we send something appropriate through to the West Northants 151 about ethical investment policy. Although technically speaking, what's been approved by council is not so much ethical as environmentally appropriate. Okay, I've made a note of that for to action this week. Moving on to page 49. I don't think there's anything new on page 49 or 50 or 51. I can just about see that it's greyed. Again on bottom of page 51, top of page 52. So the targeted emails and social media campaign to raise awareness of energy saving technologies. The update there is that's going to be included in the action plan being developed by DDC and SNC. On page 53, likewise, the responsible household messages. So the opportunity for a dedicated West Northants sustainability social media channel is being included as well in the action plan that's being developed in the rural West. Nothing on the next page. Page 55. A similar point there in response to the linking with SNC's social media. That link is very much being made because that is the arrangement being put in place as the South Northants person is leaving. It's all very much being handed over for us to continue the campaign. Nothing on page 56, 57. Page 58, again, the Investor Save initiatives will be included in the action plan being developed. Updates wise, nothing on page 50, 60, 61. Or 62 or 63. On 63, SNC is commissioning an energy consultant to identify actions and existing assets. So DDC may utilise a similar approach, and that's under exploring whether council commercial projects are viable under the Smart Export Guarantee, which has been horribly hampered by COVID.
Councillor Ritchie.
I can accept these last points. I was waiting actually on page 60. And I know that these are words that have been, you know, were there the last time we looked at this, but under the action about the use of SIL monies, it says it is not considered to be lawful to add that description to CIL infrastructure lists. Now, I have been asking around about this, and I haven't yet found anybody, and these are people who are involved in local government finance. I haven't found anybody that's been actually been able to tell me about to say that there is any reason why it would be unlawful. Can somebody send me a note on what the, you know, on what the source of this information is that suggests it would be unlawful?
This comment was provided by Simon Bowers, based on his knowledge and research and legal advice relating to what can or cannot be part of your SIL infrastructure list.
Well, as I say, it differs from what I have heard from other councils. So I would be interested to know just where the information came from.
Maria, I do think that's an important point. If a member's actually asking that, I understand that Simon Bowers may be absolutely right on this, and understand, but I do think Councillor Rich is entitled to know where he can go and check that up, because he appears not to be able to have found it himself. So just a quick reference point, I think would suffice on that, Councillor Ritchie.
Thanks for that. Yeah,
I was just answering where it had come from. That was the source, and I will follow that up.
Yeah, and with some references so it can be found, if that's possible.
Page 64. I don't know if any new ones on there. Page 65. Further expansion of electric vehicle charge points will be included in an action plan being developed in the Rural West.
Councillor Ritchie, another point?
Yes, electric vehicle charge points. I wonder, with Marino's offhand, how many we have got in the district at the moment.
Oh, this was recently reported. Something in the teens it is altogether in the district. I mean, that's why I ask, because somebody raised a question at the council meeting, and I think I may have been sorry, but I thought that that the council leader said that there were 17. Yeah.
I had been looking through some of the papers I had that didn't seem to come anywhere near that. But if it is indeed 17, and I heard it correctly, then obviously that's good news.
That's I mean, clearly that's not enough, and that's the whole point of trying to extend.
Sure. But I had only picked it up from some of the papers that we've discussed, where, you know, proposals have been made for getting additional points, that it looked as if it was a lot less than 17.
I think, Maria, if we could get that clarified as well. I think that's the issue here, isn't it? I think Councillor Ritchie's hoping it's 17 and there's going to be more. But then Councillor Robertson, if you want to ask your question.
It wasn't so much a question as querying that number 17 basically can't be correct. I've got one, and a lot of other people have in my own little village of West Haddon.
It's actually to do with available to the public charge points.
Public vehicles, I didn't know there were any.
So, charge points available for use by the public.
Thank you. Please proceed, Maria.
So that's encouraging that what we're doing with electric vehicle charging points is going to be extended into South Northants. So that's good, because they have not got anybody working on that at the moment. Likewise, iChooser solar panel scheme, we'll be looking at that also being included in the action plan for Daventry and South Northants, so Rural West activities. And I think that is the end. That's the final update. Last I heard, I think we'd approved, we've either received and approved, or received and are about to approve 18 of the climate emergency grants. So that's really encouraging, when we'd set aside 30,000 and grants can be claimed for up to 1,000. So we are actually in sight of being able to allocate that money before DDC comes to a close.
Thank you, Maria. And just again, just to reiterate, I just want to say on behalf of this committee, I think the work done by Councillor Ritchie and his team, which I think included Councillor Frost from memory, and Councillor Harris, etc. Just a big thank you that you did actually push on this, did a huge piece of work, and I think you'd be really, really proud that that those items are going forward into the new authority, and hopefully you can look back in a few years and sort of say, yes, I contributed to that. So, and I know there was other people involved as well, but a big well done on that. I'm really, really pleased that I was part of this committee when that finally went through. And thank you for your tenacity, Councillor Ritchie, on actually sorting it. And I see you have your hand up as well.
Well, thank you very much. But I clearly that thanks needs to go to Councillor Frost and Councillor Harris as well. But I mean, we did it because we felt it was important, and we wanted to do it. I had put my hand up because, given that this is our sort of last look at, this document, it seems strange, but it's only a year ago that all this kicked off, within the district council. And it's a year that has been dominated by COVID and reorganization. And I would just like to say, I think it is, remarkable what Maria and her team have actually done. Of course, we'd love it to have been an awful lot more. Perhaps in different sorts of years, it might have been a lot more. But I think in the circumstances, it would be wrong for us to sort of, finish without expressing our gratitude for what has happened.
I would certainly like to support that statement.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ritchie. I think that was very magnanimous. It's really, overall, it's just a really, really good piece of work from coming out of DDC, and I hope it's an exemplar for the new authority to see. And I think where we've seen it is because of the various items that are picked up and the things that are being run with. So yeah, thank you to absolutely everyone. It just shows the value of what can be done.
I would ensure that comment is passed on. The team will be really pleased with that. It's one officer, but it's also the greener, healthier workforce, some very committed eco warriors like myself involved in that. So they'd be delighted and to receive those comments. But also, it's been good to have that political interest and raise the profile in our final year. So all round, I think that's really good working.
And obviously that will be in our final minutes as well for posterity as well, won't it? That's I hope. So thank you, everyone. So we move on. Is the next item T-Decal? Sorry, I had to mess with my machine, so I've got my agenda up at the moment. Yeah,
so the T-Decal one, assignment 28. So the first recommendation is complete. The second recommendation.
This was my 1 year review, Maria, I think.
Oh, do you want to go through that? I do beg.
Yeah, I'll just pass that one on. So it's the 1 year review of assignment 28, which was undertaken by Councillor Adam Brown on the situation with T-Decal that I'm sure we're all familiar with. So what we're looking at here, have the recommendations actually been carried out? I hope you see from my brief reports that I believe that they actually have. I thank the officers for providing me with some really pertinent information there. But on the basis of what I saw, on the basis of above, I recommend the SMI committee give the 1 year review. Agree that the 1 year review demonstrates that the 3 recommendations made have been fulfilled, and I think that is absolutely the case. So has anyone got any questions on that? can we all agree to that? That one is closed off. Thank you. So as I said, I've lost my.
The final item is urgent business.
Yeah. So which of I know of no urgent business unless anyone else does. Okay. So there obviously is no other business, and I'll just say thank you to everyone. There's no date of next meeting, which is the normal part of the normal one as well. This is thank you and goodbye from Daventry District Council Scrutiny Improvement Committee. Thanks for all your efforts, and thank you to every member as well that's been on it over the years. Sometimes it can be an onerous and difficult task, and I think I would actually just like to say, yeah, I think we've done pretty well this year, particularly in the circumstances. And so, yeah, another thank you, and as I said goodbye to the committee. So, and on that note, I think we close.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
And officers, again, thank you for sorting all this out again for us. And have a good evening and rest of the week. Take care. Bye bye.